albeit very political. That's more so what this is coming, the angle that this is coming from, because people are trying to make political statements, and the media, as well as, unfortunately, politically motivated doctors, which exist, by the way. They'll act like they just all care about, they're not corrupt. Like, to act like the medical industry is just beyond corruption is just stupid. It's also ahistorical, but I digress. But one thing that you hear focused on a lot is hospitalizations and the ICU bed thing. Now, I do want to say this and preface it by saying this. To act like, when it looks like, because not everybody operates the same way. Like, you get a lot of Texas hospitals, for example, their entire, facilities, they have entire facilities basically dedicated to have interchangeable beds, if you will. So, certain beds are more so dedicated for ICUs, admissions, and other aren't, and they can kind of convert them back and forth. Not everybody operates like that, but of course, in the topic of conversation, is the hospitalizations and ICU bed occupancy. And it's frustrating because almost what gets missed is looking at those numbers in context, right? So we've talked about before, and high capacity ICUs, right? In order for hospitals to even be making money, they kind of have to have them. So you have year round, certain areas operate between 70 and 90%. They'd be broke if they didn't in terms of their ICU capacity. That's pre-COVID, right? And while there may be an uptick here, you get some places who have not had such an uptick, but hey, media tells you to be scared, or some doctor wants to fearmonger a nurse more so. It's usually the pop locking nurses and stuff doing the dances. Those are usually the ones that are so distraught and acting like you crazy because you don't take a vaccine or you don't advocate for vaccine mandates or face diaper mandates or anything. They act like you're being so inconsiderate because look, they'll word it in funky ways. 7 out of 10 hospital beds are in Tennessee are now taken up because of COVID. I'm like, wait a minute. That's 70% capacity. If anything, they may be they on the low end of what they usually are operating on. But damn, be that, nobody cares to even look at that. And it's not like media is going to do a good job of putting those numbers into perspective. It's just look at the percentage, look at the number. It's a high number. You should be scared and you should be lining up to get a jab. But even on the concept of hospitalization, there's something that people miss. This is coming from Johns Hopkins. Right, you've seen that, okay, there's a bunch of states who have high capacity, between 80, 90% capacity. And they make it seem like it's all COVID. No data shows that. In fact, you see this blue area, this is coming right directly from Johns Hopkins. You can look this up right now, the last looking at it in 7-day trends since September of last year, right? This is where we're at right now, between August 16th and August 22nd, most of the ICU beds that were occupied were not COVID related. The blue isn't COVID. The blue is non-COVID. The orange is COVID. Now, I'm not saying this is just dismiss anything that's being talked about. It's like, why don't they lead with that? You get spots like that, like this. This is according to Ohio's Department of Health. Looking at their total inpatient beds. This blue right here, the blue is what's COVID. This is total inpatient bed capacity, and this is ICU bed capacity. Looking at it right here, only 12% of the fucking beds are being used for COVID. So this is right now, as of fucking today, the 23rd, when we're shooting this segment. Almost 60% of the total beds are being accounted for non-COVID related patients. Now, again, I'm not saying that this means dismiss anything. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying That's a more economic question. The whole flatten the curve thing that y'all abandoned anyway, which was supposed to be about not overwhelming the hospitals, was not merely a medical or scientific equation, if you will. It was an economic one. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors are fucking economically illiterate. So it's easy for them to say, sit down, don't move, and all of that stuff. The economy is a light switch that you can turn on and off. But they don't ever lead with this. And yes, it's higher. I'm not going to sit there on the high side. This is Ohio, but you get other spots which may be 10, 20, 30 to 40 maybe. And COVID patients in some pockets around the country. But still, the vast majority of them, for the most part, as documented by this, which Johns Hopkins is taking the entire country, this is more so attributed to non-COVID related occupancy. Now, let them tell it, and let the hell, if we look at what's going on in this country, you think COVID was the only damn thing that exists. There is no other disease or illness, right? Funny, we talk about obesity, right? Which maybe makes up for a lot of these issues, because obviously that comes with its sets of other problems that will hospitalize you. You know what else is a problem that hospitalizes you when you're obese and overweight? COVID. We don't even address those problems. It's like it doesn't exist. Heart disease, which is like a leading cause of death. Well, excuse me, that would belong to one of the leading causes of death, would also belong to medical malpractice, but never mind that. Heart disease ain't even being addressed. I remember talking to earlier on in the pandemic, talking to one of my doctors and nurse practitioners about this. And we were talking about it. She was more so, this is the nurse practitioner, was I won't say upset, distraught is more what it is. Because she wasn't able to, like a lot of people weren't coming in. It wasn't because they couldn't see them. It's just because of the COVID thing was freaking people out. And at the earlier on in the pandemic, you had people that should be going to get, checked up on, weren't coming to see her because everybody's freaking out about COVID. Like that's the only damn thing that exists. See, that's what unfortunately happens. And this is why I would never let some fear-mongering piece of trash try to act like they have the moral high ground, because a lot of their policies that they advocate, as well as their hyper emphasis on one damn sickness or illness, has led to other problems, right? And those be it medical ones, not just straight physical, also mentally. And they'll never take responsibility for those, though they expect if you are a person that is against vaccine mandates, then you are responsible for every single death. Right? They'll never be responsible for any other illness or anything, stuff that goes undiagnosed, right? Because all you do is focus on one thing and know how that stuff happens, or rather how that idea percolates, if you will. It's because of stuff like this. We almost never look at things in context. The old saying of the media, or rather, corporate press, they're enemies of the people. That's why. Have you ever heard them lead with this? Probably never. What do they immediately say? Well, X percentage of hospital beds are being taken up because of COVID. They never tell you the percentage that maybe the COVID makeup is, to put it in a perspective, because they don't care to do that. It's hospitals are at a higher capacity. How often are they in the higher capacity? That doesn't mean anything. It's a fearmonger. 7 out of 10. Matter of fact, just for the sake of conversation, I'll show you an example of this. This is how they play with language. This will be the last thing I'll show you before I end this segment. I just want to type this up. I wasn't thinking to do this, but let me see if I can show you something. This was some asswipe of a nurse who's sitting here fake crying and shit, talking to the news, which is why she's doing the shit. And this is what they lead with. You might if you listen to the audio after the fact, I'll read it for you. This is coming from CBS Morning, who's covering this. This is what it says. As she's saying, I'm so tired of the people who are creating their own reality where COVID is not a problem. I don't know anybody that's ever said that it's not a problem, maybe to the degree that you try to make it out to be. So the actions that you sort of enact, if you will, don't really match up with the impact of the virus itself. And then she continues on, though. And then they have the audacity to get mad at people like me when we try to show them that no, this is real. Says, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, this is what the last sentence says. says one nurse, as 7 out of 10 ICU beds are now full in Tennessee. So they make it sound bad, but what does that mean? 70% capacity. And then when you put that into perspective, how most, if we're talking about ICU capacity, most, if not year round in certain pockets, always operate around that in percentage. Well, that's not saying much. Does CBS this morning say that? Of course not. That's not a point of emphasis. It's 7 out of 10, COVID bad, and that's it. A lot of what's happened with this illness has been a fucking sham. And there's people who have been unfortunately trusted to be spreading information. And it's funny because they deem you as the one that's spreading a lot of misinformation. They're spreading a lot of misinformation. And often their misinformation is by, let's say, not providing it in context. So it's misinformation by omission, if you will. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.